Most TEDx speakers have decades of experience as subject matter experts, so I'm sorry to disappoint you, but full disclosure, I've never been to Mars. But I think from my time here on Earth, I can show you how the people in this room and those watching have the basic building blocks to form a Martian culture. And very soon, we might. Elon Musk wants to put 1 million people on Mars by 2050. Most of the discussions are about the technology. How do we get there? What do we eat? How do we breathe? But there are legions of engineers working on these problems, and I think they can solve them. But there is one piece of machinery we're taking to Mars that's posing a bit of a challenge. It's extremely fragile. It requires constant maintenance. It causes friction in the parts around it, and it's prone to sudden and irreparable failure. And worst of all, we're not even really sure how it works. And though we can't avoid taking this machinery to Mars, its very presence there could bring the whole venture crashing down. That machinery is us, humans. I used to live in Russia for a while, and the Russians have this great tradition. They sit down a moment before they leave the house. This gives them a moment to think about the journey ahead and also remember if they forgot their keys. So let's do that before we go to Mars. Let's sit down and ponder. What are we taking with us? Imagine you've got your suitcase. You're packing it now. You put in your toothbrush, your hairbrush if you still need one, an extra pair of underwear. But what are you taking that's not in your suitcase? Because in a very real sense, you are the suitcase. Your culture, your biology, your psychology are all going with you. So what you take to Mars could change the future of interstellar humanity forever. So let's sit and ponder a moment and think, what are we taking in us? For example, gut bacteria. You're never really alone. While we're passengers on those rocket ships to Mars, gut bacteria will be passengers in us. In fact, we have almost as many bacterial cells in our bodies as we do human cells. In fact, every one of us has 10,000 species inside of us right now. That's 30 trillion creatures. We need to understand what they want, what they need to survive, because we've started to learn that we depend on our microbiota for our survival. From birth, they form a critical part of our immune system. They determine the nutrients we pull from our food. They determine whether we get hungry in the first place. They determine if we get fit or gain weight. Our microbiota forms an endocrine organ that pumps our body full of chemicals that makes us do things like go out and search for food or just stay home and get depressed. It also plays a role in our stress. We can't get bacteria on Mars, can't make a run to the local supermarket for a case of Firmicutes. We're going to have to make do with what we have. So we're going to have to get it right. If we're taking bacteria in our gut, what are we taking in our head? In order to survive on Mars, we're going to need the most resilient human beings, people who adapt quickly to adversity, who bounce back from failure, who interact cordially with their colleagues. These are the things that help us on Earth, so we know they'll be critical on Mars. Today, astronauts going into space enjoy access to full-time space psychologists. Anytime an astronaut feels sad about being so far away from their friends or family, or terrified of the darkness around them, or just stressed from work, they can call this therapist and have a chat with them. It works for all of us, actually, whether we're in deep space or in the comfort of our own homes. The only place this exists on Earth is in Antarctica. Antarctica, like Mars, is a harsh and unforgiving environment. Right now, scientists are there studying what life will be like on Mars. The people who work there have to work together, depend on each other, and encourage each other to succeed. There's a certain amount of equality and friendship that forms among people when they're in close quarters with shared goals and values. Antarctica is the kind of place where a Harvard-trained astrophysicist can sit down and have lunch with a forklift driver. That's important to understand because not everyone on Mars is going to be a godlike astronaut. We'll also have carpenters and clerks, janitors and barbers, all of them enjoying the same care, level, and attention that the scientists and engineers around them have. Best of all, the food is free. Think about the last time you went shopping. Did you know how many calories you would need to get through the week based on the tasks you had ahead? Probably not. You purchase food based on preferences, culture, advertisements, brands, sales, maybe the latest diet fad. These are all based on want, not need. On Mars, we'll need exactly what we can get. In fact, in Antarctica, scientists know exactly how many calories are required for a specific task, and on Mars it'll be the same. In order to survive on Mars, we'll need to measure every individual particle that we have there. So we'll be able to measure everything we pull from the ground, everything we mine and produce, the gas we breathe in and out, every measurement of time, even the waste, even waste from our own bodies is going to have a measured value, not for economic reasons, but for survival. Economists call this perfect knowledge. Because everything is measured and weighted and valued, there's no wiggle room for pricing or preference. We'll have exactly what we need to survive. But what about our beliefs and values? What do you believe? And does everyone agree with you? Right now, each of us hold within us legacy values. These are systems that have been in place maybe for hundreds of years, but science has long since debunked them. And yet, through no fault of our own, they still shape our daily lives. How do we keep them from polluting Mars? For example, during COVID, scientists observed a paradox. Religious faith provided the strength and solace we needed to survive a life-threatening event. But at the same time, it was often religious faith that prevented us from protecting each other and others. If that happened on Mars, that could be the end of us. Appreciating and accepting science will be a cornerstone of Martian survival. But because of the prevalence of life-threatening scenarios on Mars, we can be pretty confident that religion will play a role on life on Mars. But whose religion? Humans celebrate over 4,000 recognized religions. Do we pick one? Do we pick many? Do we allow an organic or a random distribution? That seems like the most democratic solution, but it's too critical for that. We've seen civilizations thrive with organized religion, but we've also seen them torn apart due to sectarian violence. The paradox stems from religion's exceptional ability to codify knowledge that still speaks to us over millennia. It's difficult to abandon concepts even when we know they're completely wrong. But that's exactly what Martians are going to have to do. They're going to have to abandon Earth beliefs if Martian science supports alternatives. Otherwise, our legacy could kill us. Earth's long tail will follow us to Mars. And if history has taught us anything, it's this. The past will fight to be part of the future, but the future must win. It's heavy stuff, heavy stuff. But you know what won't be heavy on Mars? Us. And gravity is only 1/3 of Earth's. So that means our children's children will grow taller than us with skinny chicken legs. That's the official term for it from NASA. Puffy head, bird legs. On Earth, you need to get a license and pass a test in order to operate a vehicle. But you don't need any training at all to become a parent. And yet nothing is more critical to the development of the human race than the care and feeding of children. Right here in New Zealand, the Dunedin study, a 40-year longitudinal study, determined that by the age of 3, children have their personality set, and this determines the rest of the course of their life. Failure in those 3 years disadvantages each successful generation afterwards. That means on Mars, we'll need to give parents, both parents, the resources they need to raise their children. So for 3 years, they'll do nothing but take care of their children as well as they can and do the one thing that matters most, raise the next generation. So I hope I'm not boring you. So we're going to talk about sleep on Mars. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but did you ever wonder why it was that ancient humans could sleep for 8 hours a night without getting eaten by lions? Researchers studying the Hazda hunter-gatherers of Tanzania found that they take turns so that at least one person is always awake, acting as a sentinel. They can do this because humans have a circadian rhythm. That's our sleep-wake cycle based on our 24-hour clock. It's the reason some of us are early birds and others are night owls. Think of those as our lion-watching shifts. Mars doesn't have lions, of course, just in case you're wondering, but it does have life-threatening situations, so we will need people watching over us. Mars also doesn't have a 24-hour day. A day on Mars is 24 hours and 37 minutes. And while you might have always thought that you wanted an extra couple of minutes during your day, it doesn't work that way. Every Martian morning will feel like jet lag unless we regulate our sleep. So on Mars, we'll sleep, and we'll sleep. There'll be no such thing as a 9 to 5. We'll work to our personal chronotype. We'll be rested and peaceful in ways we've forgotten is even possible. So what will life on Mars look like? It won't look like this or that. Definitely not that. This is what it will look like. This is what Martians will look like. So what will Martian culture look like? It is a deliberate culture that fulfills our dietary needs, allows mixed beliefs, prioritizes children, education, health, and science. It's a culture of economic equality, a culture that nurtures our mental health, a culture that sleeps. These 1 million people, these 1 million ordinary people will enjoy extraordinary support. Martians will be some of the healthiest, most educated, most physically and psychologically balanced individuals humanity has ever seen. They will be inclusive, kind, and fair, not because that's what we are, but because we must be in order to succeed. And for those of us who feel lost or sad or alone on this dark red planet in the emptiness of space, it will be a culture that reminds us we are never alone so long as we have each other. In a word, it's going to be amazing. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's great. That's terrific for the people who get to go there. But what about the rest of us? The other 8 or 10 billion of us left behind? Why can't we have that right now, right here on Earth? And that is the right question. Why don't we have that on Earth? Why don't we balance our microbiota, access mental health care when we need it, encourage each other to succeed, ensure everyone has access to food to perform their daily tasks, help each other raise healthy children, and get a good night's sleep? Why don't we have that on Earth? Because the answer to that question is the most important thing we take with us to Mars. Thank you.